How you doing? Ooh. Hey, welcome to a new video. My name is John Skippy Limcool. Hands together, head bowed. Nice to see you. Welcome. Hey, so this video is being released at 12 p.m. on July 3rd. Normally I'm doing a live stream, but I'm in Eastern Oregon, seeing my mom and dad for the first time in over a year, spending some time with family. There's a little family reunion, 4th of July, that kind of stuff. So I'm releasing a video to keep you company. And I'm gonna make, I think this will be a really helpful video to some of you. This is a power tips and tricks video from beginning to advanced, okay? And we're gonna cover stuff that's first super basic. And by the end, we're gonna be taking pads and making them into a wave sequence. And each tip will have step-by-step instructions. You're allowed at any time to hit pause, back up, watch something again, even like turn it off and play with a tip and experiment and write a song. Do whatever you want. This is all about giving you creative ideas, making sure you really understand what you can do with Unify. So I want to cover from the simple stuff to some of the more complex things in one video. Woo! Okay, so let's get going. To start with, this is going to be a video where I'm highlighting this library. This is MegaMagic PADS 2 Mosaic. It just came out, just released the update with 150 patches now inside of it. 10 of my customers have written a wonderful, they're all 5-star reviews, which is great. And they go through and talk about what they like with the library. It's very helpful. I love, this right here is a great quote. This is what everyone wants their pad libraries to sound like. That's wonderful. Kendall, thank you, my friend. That's a very nice comment. So pluginguru.com is where to go for any libraries for Unify. There's a free demo version of Unify. If you want to try out some of the stuff I'm going to show you with the demo version, for the most part, even though I'm showing this library and showing pads, this will work with even the standard patches that come with Unify or any of our, there's quite a few libraries, all these unified libraries. If you want the unified libraries, you can go to the Unify Standard Edition page at the Plugin Guru website and just scroll down till you see this list of all of these plugins listed. And if you own Zebra 2, then just click this and it will take you to a Dropbox page where you can download our unified library for Zebra 2. And by doing that, that means you can go over here. Oh, of course, I don't have Zebra 2 in here right now. I have Bazil library. So go over here and now the Bazil library is available for you to play and use all of its 2,000 plus patches that come with Bazil. And they're some incredibly cool patches. And I'll maybe slide over here and show you some stuff with that, like when you're layering layers and stuff when we get to that kind of a talk. But we're going to start with simple stuff. So let's go back here to Mystery Romance All. To first begin, this is just about this specific library. I want to point out that the way it's laid out, there's an all patch, which means all of the layers in a single sample map. So I sampled all 4 layers, right? Then you have the A, B, C, D. These are the 4 layers that make up that all. A, lovely, beautiful pad. B, C, and then the D, because it says wet and dry, that's a indication that this is a motion sound. I played each of the notes independently. This is using Plasmonic from Rhythmic, which is Brian Clevenger's company, wonderful synth, and I performed each of the notes. And this is the dry version, and then the wet version. Right? Okay, so you have them as separate layers. You have them as an all in a stereo mix. And then you have multi. And multi is really fun because it shows all 4 layers And if you click down here in the bottom left of Unify's interface to the knobs, and you go from 1 to 2, you can see that there's these controls here that allow you to turn on and off different layers. This knob right here does some really cool trickery where it plays all of them, or it cycles to just one of them. And if I go to these other ones and I say I want to turn on 2 and 1, they're on. Then when I go back to all, I don't hear anything until I play new notes. Okay? So the fun thing with the multi-patches, and we'll talk about this in a little bit because one of the tips is that each layer could be a different plugin that you own. So you can go crazy with all sorts of things, and then it's all set up for you to turn on and off those 4 layers in your song. So these are really useful templates for all sorts of music composition, not just for pads. So that's the layout of each one of the 7 different master pads. Is there's an all, then there's the A, B, C, D, sometimes E, elements, sometimes wet, sometimes dry. That's your clue that it's motion. And then you have multi, which is the fun one where on the knobs, you can cycle between the different layers. So I'm going to use the all because this is just a simple layer. Nice big strings. First off, there's 2 audio effects to the right of the instrument. GuruSampler is the instrument. We're going to play with this a little bit later with some of the bigger tips. But to the right of that are 2 audio effects. One is MDA loudness, which just adds a focused low end. Love it. It's one of my secret weapons. Without it, with it. And then Pump House is our sidechain rhythmic kind of a plugin. We'll be talking about that in a little while because this one of the tips is to use it for rhythmic stuff. But if you click on Pump House, you could also go over here to modulation and say, no, let's change this to be phase mod. And if we bring up the feedback, pad, right? And if the volume's too loud, then you can turn it down. But if you click right here, you could go to any of your audio effects. I could go down here to Valhalla. I could say Valhalla Shimmer. Let's bring up the feedback a little bit. And now I got shimmering, right? So any of your audio effects are available to add to the pads, to warm them up, do all sorts of things. I'm going to show you one other one that I love is distortion with noise box. If you click the little box in the middle, this is how you bring up distortion. And typically, it doesn't sound, sometimes it's cool on certain pads, but not that useful, right? But what's fun with noise box is that there's a filter before the distortion and there's a filter after the distortion. And the filter before allows you to control what is going to be distorted. So let's go over here to high pass filter and take all that low end out. So just getting the high end stuff. And it doesn't sound that great by itself either. But the magic of noise box is there's a mix. So I can go from no distortion to just a little bit to give it a little edge. Right? And then the post filter is actually gonna do, I love to put like a low pass filter on this, bring up the resonance, and again, since mix isn't 100%, I can have this just be in cool coloring. So using noise box set like a high pass, low pass like this, with the mix at like 8%, allows me to just bring this additional stuff that's going to give that pad more attention in your mix. And it just might take a little bit, but even 5% is a really, really cool, and it's not just EQ, it's actually a distortion to the sound, which is great. So adding your own effects, playing with the effects in Unify, that is tip number 1. Now, I was talking about the A, B, C, D for all the different parts, right? Well, tip number 2 is layering patches to make interesting, in this case, pads. Like you could choose Mystery Romance A and right click on Destiny B and load this into a new Unify layer. Now I have nice octaves. You're gonna wanna hold down Option and turn down the volumes to maybe 8 dB to keep it from getting too loud. And then let's add C from the pads, Tsunami. And then turn it down. Right? So you can play with the layers. And now here, let's go over here to the Bazille library. Let's go down here to pads. And we could say, give me string theory, load this into a new Unify layer. And now Bazille has been added to 2 pads, or to 3 pads actually. And then I could go changing the world. Right? So you can play with any patch from any library that you own. That's why patches are so powerful in Unify, because you can layer them. It's not just they're just by themselves being simple patches like everybody else's plugins. Unify lets them all be combination. It's all tender to put together and make all sorts of cool layers and combinations. Right? All right, now you're hearing something. Hear how there's a chord? There's a 5th in there because changing the world is playing more than just the main notes. So the next tip is by using the tuning parameter right here, you can take a layer and do all sorts of things with it. So let's go back to MegaMagic PADS 2. And let's go to the pads and let's choose Tsunami A. But we want the pads. We don't want synths yet. So synths are fast attack versions of the pads. There's one for every one. So let's go title Tsunami A. Okay. And then let's go to Troubled Waters D. Right click, load into a new Unify layer. And then let's transpose this up +7. And now you have a really killer 5th pad. And because it's a growing pad, it kind of like fades in on you, right? Now, what if I wanted that brighter part at the beginning? Well, then you open up Unify, go to the GuruSampler and take the sample start and move it somewhere in the middle. And now you've got it right there. And then if you want to really get carried away, I'm going to turn back on the master effects. Go over here and say duplicate. And let's take this one up to be +12. And then let's duplicate again. And let's say this one will be +19. And now we have a huge chord on one note. So you can play just octaves of major chords. It sounds great. So layering and then playing with transposing lets you get into chords. Okay. Another fun one to play with is splits, to split it. So let's go over here and let's choose, let's go Destiny B. That'd be a nice bass sound, like a bass pad. It needs to play a little faster. It's a little slow, so open up GuruSampler, make the attack shorter, and then bring the sample start later. So now it can play and speak when you play it right away. Okay? And then let's layer this, let's say with another Destiny patch. Let's say wet C, load into new Unify layer. But I want that to play in the right hand and I want the bass to be in the left hand. I want them separated like a true split. The way to do a split is to see where it says G8 and C-2. That's the keyboard range. And as you click on G8 and drag on the bass, I'm changing the top note. So I could change this to be, say B2. And for the bottom note, there's a shortcut that's really cool. Instead of clicking and dragging, you can just right click and you see a question mark, then play the note that you want. And now you made a split. So I have a bass. Now, if I want to add to either the bass or the chord, all I have to do is go over here and say duplicate the layer, and I now can go into Unify, into the GuruSampler, and I could choose any other sample map that's here. I could say Sculpture Garden B. Or see if I want it to be a pad to layer with motion. And for the bass, let's say duplicate, just go duplicate. And I'm gonna take this and just drag so I can bring it up here so that it is layered next to the other bass patch. Go GuruSampler. Instead of being MegaMagic PADS, I'm gonna actually go, let's go all the way to the Unify standard library, basic waveforms, Unison 8, big detuned. Bring down the filter. Because I have a slow fade in, fade out on the filter envelope already. So just bringing down the cutoff and playing with the filter intensity, you'll get all sorts of cool sweeps. And you know how we talked about adding effects to the layer? Let's go here and add it to be delay. So I've made a cool split. And it's a little loud, so hold down Option or Alt, click on one of the volume and see how it changes all the volumes together. So you can bring them all down together. Okay, so now we've made splits. Okay, all right. So for the next tip, we're going to use a multi-patch. A multi-patch, again, is where it's, in these cases with MegaMagic PADS, 4 layers. Each layer has a pump house on it. So I could go over here to pump house for each one of these and crank them up and change to be different parameters and different shapes and so forth. So the first one's going to be a pulse. Right? Let's go to the second one. Let's turn up pump house. Click on the little graph. Go to presets. Let's say numbered presets, and let's say 4 down. And then you can click and drag on the curve shapes. add something interesting here. Go to pump house. Maybe we want this just to be a curved pump, right? So bring down the depth. I like that kind of shape. Add an extra point and make it be a nice big S. And then go to the third part. And instead of using Pump House for this third part, let's go into GuruSampler itself. Let's use something to pitch on the LFO. And let's go over here and let's say just unidirectional, so it doesn't like go the whole range, just from top down to the pitch. And then let's go to the shape and say custom and make it be a really fast little chiffy. And then finally it needs to be synced. So you go over here to say sync the LFO, sync to be notes, quarter notes. And I could make multiples. It's a lot easier if we want to start doing multiple timing events to go over to the numbered pulse presets and just choose, like say 4 steps down is a really good one to use. And then hold down Option and you can, you can hold down Option and that lets you move the depth of these without actually changing the timing values, which is really important. So let's get these to be really snappy. So there's all sorts of ways to play with the parameters to get rhythmic things happening, but taking a standard pad and just turning on pump house on each of the layers lets you get to all sorts of really fun places to go, okay? Okay, so, and again, each of these layers, you could pop in any plugin that you have in your arsenal of plugins. And if you haven't done it already, just hit the little plugin, little icon button down there, go to operations, scan for new updated VST. That will look at your plugins and give you the VST plugins to work with. That's what we use for all of our unified libraries. So I would suggest scanning VST. Even if you use Unify in Logic with audio units for the plugin that is loaded into Logic, Unify can still use VST2 plugins. It doesn't care. What happens and what's loaded into Unify is not necessarily what plugin you have to use. You could use the AAX version in Pro Tools, still load VST2 into Unify. So if you haven't done it already, that's how you get your plugins to do all this fun stuff and go down here and say, oh, I want to use, Cable Guy's Curve 2 on this layer. Boom, there it is. Now you're using Curve 2 on that layer. So super fun. Okay, we're ready for the final tip. This is wave sequencing. And again, let's do this with a pad. I'm going to go to the string pad for this one so it's a little easy to tell what's going on. So this is the power strings, which is made from 4 string patches. 1, 2, 3, and then a cool motion thingy in there. Okay, let's get this takes a little bit of programming to get set up, so we'll do the steps together nice and slow. Go to Layer, MIDI Effects, add MIDI Effects, right? Go down here to Polybox 4 Layer. That adds Polybox, double click. We want to set it to Chord/AR, which is auto reset, and 4 layers, because we're going to be working with 4 layers. I want to use MIDI box to trigger this. So we're going to go arpeggiators, MIDI box, and we want to go to the Unify standard library. Let's click there to load. Let's go to, this is going to sound funny, but I'm going to use a drum single part, just the 8th note accent. So I just have an 8th note playing, and it's set right here. So it's poly transpose already set up by default. Now, you have to have MIDI box in front of polybox by click and drag to put MIDI box in front of polybox, because the notes are going to hit polybox and then polybox is going to distribute them to the different layers. Can't do that if polybox is first, because polybox wants to distribute and it's not getting the information to distribute. So our MIDI effect is set up. Now we're going to connect that to the 4 layers that are here. Click right here, go polybox 4 layers. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then MIDI channels. Each one needs to be on a different MIDI channel. So 1, 2, you want it to be consecutive. It can't just be random, but 1, 2, 3, and 4. So now, it's playing the 4 different string layers one at a time. And if I wanted to, I could, let's get it to be snappier. So go to each of the layers, get later into the sample starts. And you can have different amounts of sample start and so forth. Find the part of the sample you want it to play. You want to randomize. And go to the 4th part, which is that cool like sample motion stuff. And then let's do this. Let's have this cool, have a cool snappy attack on it too. So go to the LFO, set it to unidirectional, 1 shot, curve being custom, and then bring up pitch. And then speed. If you want, you can make multi-segment, so double click, bring this to be really small. So I could pan. I could put a delay on this separate layer since there's 4 separate layers that are each doing their own thing. Let's have this do like 8th notes and have it have a little bit of offset. So they're going to go out of time together. Let's have one be 16th notes. Add a little distortion, power curve. High pass. So that's rhythmic wave sequencing now playing 4 different layers. And if I wanted this layer to be a whole different sound, all I have to do is go to any plugin I own. Let's say generate and find a sound. And now that 3rd layer is playing with a whole different synth instead of the GuruSampler pad. So here's generate, and let's go over here to, they don't have, oh, here we go, keys. Right? So, so the possibilities of using any of your plugins on any of the layers, it gets very, very fun, very, very quickly. You will go down all sorts of fun rabbit holes, I promise you. That's the fun of Unify, is it's a rabbit hole instigator, you know? So I hope these tips help. Enjoy, and we'll see you in the next video, okay?